Hi, and welcome to another episode of Inside NDF, sponsored by National Dance Foundation. Each week, we bring you a new conversation as we chat with the movers and shakers of the dance industry. So we were always so excited. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce you to a good friend of mine, Jane O'Donnell. Jane, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So excited. So, as we always start out, I always ask everyone to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became involved in dance.
Okay, well, I'll start at the beginning. I was born and raised in Massachusetts, north of Boston. I've lived here my whole life. I've been married for almost 43 years to my husband, Rich.
We have a person, everyone, very nice.
He's a nice guy. He lets me have my crazy moments. It's perfect. We work together very well. We have 3 grown children, and we just had our 3rd grandbaby, which is it has put a different definition to the word joy, having these grandchildren. I never thought, I thought of being like a nana was going to be so, I don't know, old, but it's keeping me young, believe me. Yes. As far as professionally, I've been a dance teacher. I'm going to be starting my 50th year teaching dance in September, so I'm ending my 49th year. I am semi-retired now. I'm only at the studio 1 day a week physically, but then everything else I can do remotely, and my daughter is now the director of the studio. Our studio is located in North Andover, Mass, which is a suburb about 30 minutes north of Boston. And together we're building, we're continuing I hate to use the word legacy because that sounds like, we're continuing Center for Performing Arts with another family member taking over. My mom signed me up for dance at 3 years old, like many parents do, and I've never stopped. It's kind of in my DNA being a dancer. I originally was a student, and then I transitioned to being a teacher, and then I transitioned to being a studio owner, and now apparently a mentor, which is
I love, which is very good.
It's been a great journey.
So now, how long have you had your studio, and what made you decide to become a studio owner?
So in 2001, my daughter's dance teacher approached me, and she was moving on. My daughter was 14, which is such a lovely age. And I knew that if I didn't take it over at that point, she probably would stop dancing. And I knew that she loved it, but she was 14 after all. So, but my very first studio was when I was really young, right out of school. I call that my practice run because I had no idea what I was doing. I was a really good dance teacher, she said humbly, but the business part of it was really tough for me. I didn't have, other than, typical school business, I didn't have a lot of training in the business side of it. I certainly didn't have experience dealing with the parents, which is another that needs to be a whole other subject.
Correct.
In school is dealing with not only clients but parents of your students. So I had that studio for a couple of years, and as fate would have it, I met my husband simultaneously with when they were selling the building that I was in. So I took it as a sign from somewhere that it was time to move on from that. I was struggling business-wise. I was doing great with enrollment, and I loved what I was doing, and I knew that that was going to be my journey. It just wasn't the right time. The timing wasn't right. So my husband and I moved. I walked away from that studio. I continued my dance education. I took classes, would take the bus into New York or Boston, and I taught for a ton of studios over the years. And even my dance teacher, he had a hip replacement, and I took over for him for a while. So I had a lot of experience with all different ages and different types of dance. And then I had 3 children in 4 years. So there's a little gap there that I don't remember a lot of what was going on about. But but then
a lot of different decisions to make being a dance teacher to a studio owner.
Well, yeah, and it was once I walked away from the first studio back in the day when I was literally a teenager. I was 19 or 20 years old when that happened. I had no desire to own a studio again. I knew that the business part of it was just so difficult, and the struggles with, balancing making money. Those were the days when the kids would walk in with like $2 and that was their dance class money. And if they didn't have their money, like trying to say you can't take dance class, there were issues there that I just didn't want to deal with. But again, in 2001, my daughter was entering high school, and I said to my husband, we'll just do it for a few years, so that she can get through high school. And then she graduated from high school, and I said, we'll just do it for a few years so she can make some money. She can make more money working for me than she can at the mall. And so that's just how it happened. And I just thought at some point I would walk away. I would just do this because it benefited my situation at the moment. And here we are 23 years later.
Which is wonderful. Now, one of those decisions that you decided being a studio owner was not to be a competitive studio. Tell me why.
So you have a lot more wisdom when you're in your 40s and you take over a studio than when you're in your 20s. And the trajectory for most dancing schools is just the way the business evolved, is that people started competing. But just let me back up. I was a competition teacher at other studios, and I was a competition dance mom. My daughter was in competitions from the time she was 5 years old. So I saw it from both sides. And I mean, honestly, this is no disrespect to competition company, competition teams, competition studios. It was just my decision. Because I truly believe that dance is an art that doesn't need to be judged. And just like a piece of art on the wall, some people love it, some people don't. Right. And in my situation, I'm like, okay, so I'm putting a kid out there with my choice of choreography, my choice of costume, my choice of music, all my choices. And they're executing it the way that I told them to execute it. And they're either getting awarded or penalized, depends on who the judge is. And it just didn't sit right with me. I'm like, this doesn't mean a lot to me. And also, moving forward, like I think that now in 2024, everybody gets an award. And I think it's a false sense of their ability. So if they do want to go further and they've won all these awards and then they don't make the dance team, it's devastating for them at a later age. So I mean, this is purely my opinion. It's the way that I decided. Everybody around me is a competitive studio. So for me, it was like a new business model. It was like, I'm going to be different.
It's a radical departure, because you're right. The majority of studios are competitive.
I'm a little rebel. I mean, so, but I decided to be different, create my own lane, be confident in it. I think that's like the biggest lesson I can say is whatever road you decide to go down in your business, and especially in being a dance studio owner, which is not easy a lot of times. You just have to be confident in the way that you want things to be. I mean, back in the dark ages before the wheel was invented, when I was a student, there were conventions. Okay, you had a convention that you learned from these industry professionals that you were in awe of, and there was a first, second, and third. They would pluck out these kids that stood out, and so 3 kids might get an award, just like the Olympics, right? And the majority of people left with nothing except a desire to get better and stronger and to rise to the level, and maybe they might get one of those awards next time. Right. So that's
if you're not doing competition, and it's so important to give kids an opportunity to perform. Like you said, it is an art form. So what activities do you take place? Do you offer?
First of all, I mean, it was hard to convince people that I was worthy. People think if you're not competitive, then you're recreational. And that drove me crazy because, my payroll doesn't show that we're a recreational studio. We have 18 teachers on staff and our kids are being very well trained, but I knew I needed to do something for those kids that wanted a more vigorous curriculum. In addition to the kids that didn't want to commit. I found that after COVID, a lot less kids wanted to commit. Their parents were so sick of them being in the house, they signed them up for everything. So the business is constantly evolving, but we first and foremost focus on community events. Those are the easiest and the most rewarding, in my opinion, not only for the students to be involved in their community, but for my business, to be seen.
Sure.
And to be seen that we are non-competitive, but my kids are good. My kids can, do what every other studio does, just as good.
Rewarding to the parents to live in the community that they're in, to see their kids perform in a community event. That's very rewarding all the way around.
Right. So, like local festivals, local fairs, parades. But one of the things I love doing is we volunteer at different fundraising events in the town. So every year my kids volunteer and then perform at the annual Alzheimer's Walk. We also, I don't want to downplay this because people used to talk about, when I was a kid, we danced at nursing homes. That is the most wonderful place for children to dance at is, they have now assisted living. They have, in our building, we happen to have an adult daycare for, elderly people that can't be left alone. And we just bring in some kids and have them dance for 15 minutes. And it brings so much joy. Sometimes those are the only visitors they have for weeks on end in some of these places. It's especially easy to do at holiday time when we have our little holiday performance and they come in and they're costume dressed festively. And so I love the community events. But other than that, we also do, bigger things, or I don't want to say more.
You do your Christmas show too.
We do 2 huge performances. Like a lot of studios just do a year-end performance, especially if they're a competitive studio because they're busy going to competitions and they're busy training for competitions. So we have a huge, actually it's more profitable than our year-end show, but that's another seminar. I think So we do 2 performances, one in December and one in June, but we've done other, so we formed a performance team. That's what I was kind of getting at before. Because I was losing kids to competition school. They wanted that acclamation. They wanted that,
dance.
They wanted to dance, but they also wanted those bragging rights. Like, we went to whatever to perform, So we've done, let me think. We've danced at Disney, the parade at Disney. We have danced on cruise ships. My favorite big activities are things that include other studios and other students. So they make lifelong friends with kids that they share the same joy. So bowl games or sporting event pregame or halftime shows that they have to be cohesive and dance as a team. And our big trip, we do one big trip every year to New York City. We've been doing that for a while, but recently we've partnered with AIMT, which is the American Institute for Musical Theater. And we host different studios. We invite studios to join our studio, and they take class with Broadway professionals. They have a mock audition. They learn choreography for an opening and closing number. And then we do a performance on Sunday before everybody leaves. So, it's so much fun. I mean, for us, it's just a 4-hour bus trip, but it's so much fun because, again, there's other studios that join us and dance with our kids. They get to see, like, is this what I want to do? Is this the type of education I want to pursue?
Exactly. Do I want to be a Broadway dancer? Do I want to make this a career? That's a phenomenal experience.
Yeah, it really is. It's partnering with AIMT that's been the past couple of years. It's been a wonderful opportunity for my kids. Like, again, the mock audition, and
amazing. That's amazing.
Critique, the honest critique, when the kids are dancing from these Broadway professionals. Like, I will say that the downside to not being in competition school is that they don't get the opportunity to perform as much as competition dancers. So the competition dancers are trained and they see the other kids on the stage. They don't think it's like weird to have the face and the personality. Whereas my kids are so focused on technique, sometimes I got to tell them to lighten up a little bit. So that's what getting that feedback,
important
is
from a professional, especially in Broadway. That's amazing.
Yep.
Now, you did this the past couple of years. How is that your family business? How's that transition going with your daughter?
So honestly, it's getting better and better. I mean, when I took over the studio, and my daughter, I told her I was taking over the studio. She out now told me she was not going to do this. So like, why are you doing this? And again, I thought at the beginning it would just be, continuing her dance education and keeping her busy, because at 14, she hadn't done any sports. She hadn't been involved in anything. She was at the studio 5 or 6 days a week. That's how it started with her. And she went off to college and she got her MBA and she went and got a job. And she actually got a job in an office. She was a social media marketing person. And she taught at a dance studio right around the corner from her office. And that was the best thing in the world, because I just gave her, it killed me, because I'm like, Jesus, I need work. I need help on Tuesdays. But it was like she saw somebody else, the way they didn't realize I wasn't so crazy, maybe. But then one day she came to me and she said, when can you afford to pay me what my big girl job pays me? And I was like, no. Right? Because I didn't know what I was going to do. I was just still, I'm just going to take it 1 year at a time, 1 day at a time, and just go with the flow. And so we transitioned her slowly. She started by being the director of the performance team. So she was in charge of their performances, their costumes, their choreography, all that stuff. We eventually taught her how to do payroll and scheduling. And now she really does 95% of the stuff at the studio. She's now the director. And I am, I pay the bills, which, and,
And you're kind of transitioning a little bit into seminars.
What?
I'm sorry. You're kind of transitioning a bit into being a teacher,
a mentor. I'd say a mentor, mentor. But like for her, we're different generations, and you have to, like anybody that's thinking about transitioning, you have to recognize that you're in a different generation. She's so good with the moms today. I roll my eyes a lot when I go into the studio. She can identify with them because she is of that generation. She brings all the social media, to read my email, and I know how to, but you know what I mean? She knows all the ins and outs as far as social media marketing. And she respects what I bring to the table, which is experience and years of,
and foundation. She's building on a foundation. Correct. And that's so important. You have to have a strong foundation.
So I really think that the magic recipe is patience and respect for each other during the transition. And she knows when I'm ready to totally be gone, I'll totally be gone. But it's fun to work with my daughter. It's fun. Now my son's daughter, my granddaughter is there. So it's fun to watch that. And it's fun to not have to worry about all the things I hated doing that she's really good at doing. So
it's really the fun kind. It's like the grandma. You can just go and do the fun stuff and then leave.
Exactly. She still calls me for decision-making things. And what do you think? And I've got an idea and I'm not sure. And, we still go deal with that, but it's just getting better and better. It's just not always real smooth at the beginning, and
of course nothing is smooth in the beginning.
Yeah.
But now we're going into UDMA. You're going to be presenting again for the second time a seminar. Why do you enjoy speaking to dance teachers and studio owners? Why? We grow into a different time in our life. So why do you enjoy being this mentor?
Well, it's very humbling to me to think that I have something worthwhile to share. It's like,
I can vouch that you do. You have many worthwhile things.
Oh, thank you. But it's very rewarding to try to help studio owners, especially like for me, I was a learn as you go business. Like, I didn't have training back in the late 70s, early 80s. Like there wasn't as much focus on training dance teachers to be a business owner. It was purely based on being a dancer. So that was not the easiest path. So to think that I can maybe make a difference in this next generation, or like to studio owners that might be stuck and just need a little push or encouragement, like you're doing a great job, like that's, to me, that's, like I said, it's very rewarding. It's very humbling. And I think it's my next career.
It's off to a great start.
Yeah, and you know what? It's like it's what I like about it is that it's there's 4 weekends in a row or whatever, and I'm busy, but then I still can be a nana and a dance, a wife, and I can travel and I can do all that stuff. So it's a perfect kind of finale.
I love it. Well, we're not ready to call it a finale yet. Let's just call it a next act.
Okay.
Finale. So what message do you really try to get across to studio owners and dance teachers? Because now I know from these seminars, you're speaking to all different ages and all different amounts. You have that new studio owner and the one who's been there at a studio for many years.
That's like, oh my God, why am I still doing this? Because I know, like, that was oh my God. Anyway, I think in this business, you need to be prepared for the unexpected. And I think that COVID definitely taught me that. I had a lot of time to sit at home and say, oh my God, what am I doing? But when I hear of studio owners stressing out, I mean, I'm on Facebook all the time. I mean, I'm a Facebook person and I'm a Facebook stalker. I go to all the pages and try to participate if necessary. But anyway, when I hear like they're stressed out because costumes are late, or the students drop out the week before the show, or the venue canceled, or the venue flooded, or whatever, it's all part of owning a studio, and we need to be prepared for the unexpected. We've got to pivot, and we are really good at pivoting. And so if it means that you have to use your costumes from last year, or if it means you have to do your recital on the town common because you don't have a venue, being calm and like just strong teaches your students and your clients that you are a strong woman and a strong business person and someone that they want to send their child to your studio. So I think
great message.
The message is to be flexible but at the same time, you got to stick to your brand and your policies, and don't let the parents walk all over you. Like
that's the secret.
It took me a long time to have the courage to like stand up to my staff and clients and be the leader. I think that you need to. A lot of dance studio owners are very young when they start. And so they tend to be a target for people to take advantage of them. Equally is that if a dad walks into the studio and he sees a young woman there, and this is very stereotypical and it's probably not politically correct, and my daughter will say, Mom, you can't say that. I feel like we lower our, we just kind of like, okay. And you let people make decisions for you that you've already thought about. And I'm not saying don't take into consideration some constructive criticism, but have your philosophy, have your culture for your studio, have it the way, just like for me, it's being non-competitive. And when people come in and try to change my mind, I just say, this probably isn't the right place for you.
Correct. You're the professional in the situation, and that's always the most difficult.
I think another thing is to make sure that you value yourself and make sure you pay yourself.
Yeah.
It's okay to make money as a dance studio owner. For some reason, we always feel bad.
That's a new concept that's kind of being branded out there to let everybody know it's okay.
It's okay. In fact, you're supposed to. It's what you're supposed to do. And for some strange reason, we always feel badly when, or they say the parents are looking and saying you marked up my costume or whatever. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
It's what it costs. Yeah. And so does Macy's.
That's so funny.
Right.
Now, as you know, National Dance Foundation's mission is kindness, inclusion, and community. So my question to you is, why do you think that would benefit the dance students and the dance community? What is your thoughts about NDF's mission?
Well, I mean, I think it's kind of a no-brainer to be like kind and inclusive and, and community oriented. I think it's like as a human being, it's kind of a no-brainer. But in the dance community, our industry can sometimes be focused on, being bigger than the studio down the road, or being better, or, winning more trophies, or having the award winning. I think that adopting that kind of philosophy, and it softens the industry, what people think of it. I mean, I hate to give her any credit, but like the dance mom situation, people just got the assumption that every dance studio was like that. So to include an NDF philosophy in with your own branding is just wonderful. It would be.
And it opens up, and the goal with the mission especially revolved around opening up opportunities for special needs dancers. But there's kids out there who love to dance that are going to be your most faithful 1 hour a week dancer who loves it, and that's the most that they have.
My favorite kids, because the way that I do my tuition is like we discount the more classes they take. So a once a weeker makes me the most money per body in that room. And if you think of it in that way, to include
it makes them your best, that should be your best customer.
We do our, because we don't compete, again, we do all of our core classes based on grade in school. So they're dancing with their friends, and some of those kids do the performance team, and they are more talented or better trained or whatever you want to say than the once a weeker, but they still get to do that weekly class, that technique class with their friends and their buddies. That's called inclusion. It doesn't necessarily just mean the special needs, because I'm going to tell you, we had a wonderful special needs class. We called it our Shining Stars, and it was an extension of our performance team. So we mentored one special needs child with one kid on the performance team who danced with them in class every week, who performed with them on stage in their same recital costume. I know some studios had them they were all together. They were inclusive. After COVID, we were closed for COVID, and then those kids got older, and it's been harder to get back into, because the way that we found is to get into the schools, to talk to the school and the teachers. And it's been a little more difficult to penetrate that genre, but yeah, but I mean, being inclusive is just kind of like a no-brainer. It's like, I don't understand why it wouldn't benefit every dance studio.
Especially students as people, like you them having to work together. Yeah. That affects both lives in nothing but positive ways that they'll take on long after they've stopped dancing, right, which is so important.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's a wonderful philosophy to adopt, into addition to your whatever your culture is at your studio, is to just be kind and be inclusive. And again, it's easier for me because we don't do the competitions. And I know that the competitive studios, because they're competing and they're being judged, they need to put kids in a class, that all are the same level and whatever. And, it's much easier.
Then when we get to the competitions, and one thing that we've started, which has just been really wonderful, is community can take effect at competitions where the kids get to be friends. We offer the National Dance Foundation #KIC award to the studio that shows the best spirit, not necessarily the best dancer, but who really had that kindness, that inclusion. Because, really, if you think about it, some of these kids could make friends for a lifetime.
It's true.
So it's a win-win whether you're competitive or non-competitive.
It is. It's a great organization. It's a great philosophy. Like I think that we have an opportunity as dance studio owners, we're their second family. So we can teach them in collaboration and parallel with their family on how to be a good person, how to be a good human being. And, they're at our studio so much that.
And for so many years.
For so many years.
That's one thing that's unique about being a dance teacher, is you will see that child grow from second grade, maybe up until they graduate high school. So you see them for many years. So.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like your own kid when you're like want to hit them upside the head, but you can't do that. That's the only thing.
Well, they hit them upside the head and then cry when they're leaving. So.
Yeah, and then they go home though. So it's kind of like being a grandmother, actually.
Well, Jane, I want to thank you so much. So any final comments before we get ready to wrap up?
Well, I think just enjoy the privilege of being a studio owner and being a dance teacher, because it really is a wonderful It's a wonderful vocation. Recognize what an honor is to be a second family to so many kids. Take time to smell the roses and enjoy every minute. We're very lucky to be in this business, but it goes by like that. I can't believe 50 years in September since I had a class of my own, and it doesn't seem possible. So, just, enjoy every moment and embrace how lucky we are to affect kids. My husband says it all the time. We'll be in the grocery store and a little kid will come up to me, or a teenager will come up to me and give me a big hug. He says, I don't get that with my business. And it's like, it makes you realize like how lucky we are to be studio owners and dance teachers and affect the next generation.
Wonderfully said. Wonderfully said. And this is why we're so happy and so honored that you could take part on Inside NDF, and we got a chance to interview you. So I want to thank you for coming. Thank everyone for listening. And once again, thank you for taking the time for our podcast, Inside NDF, sponsored by National Dance Foundation. If you'd like to learn more about National Dance Foundation and our mission, please visit our website at nationaldancefoundation.org. So we'd like to say goodbye to everyone. And as we do, we always end with keep dancing.
Thanks, Kathy.